Hi, everyone. Good morning. I'm immigration lawyer John Khosravi coming to you live at 6 a.m. Pacific time, June 27, 2022, a Monday. Hope you have a good start to the week. I'm really excited, and I intentionally put these podcasts in new weekly ones I'm doing at the beginning of the week to set the tone for everything, set the tone for success. We're going to go over what I think is the best type of video type I do, which is go just over legal stuff I've learned, legal stuff that's in the news on immigration. I have to say this is general purposes, education only, not intended for individual legal guidance. Things could be wrong, things could be off, things could change by the time you review this. Consult with an attorney in private. That's for the regular people who watch this, but really this is for other immigration lawyers. Give you a heads up on things that are happening. At the end, going to discuss some marketing stuff too, which is really helpful if you listen to the end and hopefully put that all into 30 minutes. It is episode 246 of the Immigration Lawyers Podcast. Before we start the whole thing, I want to remind everybody about the Immigration Lawyers Toolbox magazine. Issue 4 is out. Issue 5 is technically should be out any day now. But go and check out issue 4. I'm interviewing people that do these issues, and I read the articles and like, wow, this is so much information. I wish this was there when I started in this way, because to really just learn a lot. If you're trying to dive into another field, a lot of information, a lot of mentorship opportunity available with these lawyers that publish. So it's a great thing to do. Just go to immigrationlawyers.com/magazine and check that out. You're really going to like it. I want to thank our sponsor, DACAwise.com, who's always been a big supporter of the podcast and the magazine from the beginning. DACAwise.com, an all-in-one form system that a lot of people are using, always being talked about. They're just a big supporter of immigration lawyers. Go to DACA.com/immigration-lawyers-podcast and use the code immigration lawyers podcast. You get 10% off extra their annual plan. And at least give it a shot. Go run it, use the software, see if you like it. Very nice executive team there to speak with regularly, really good people. Having said that, also, we have a community, and I just got this new software called School, SKOL.com. You don't need to know that, but it's an all-in software. I'm not a marketing product name, but I have like a Facebook page for immigration lawyers. We have comments. I have these Vimeo videos with links. They go through the immigrationlawyerstoolbox.com website to see for subscribers and stuff like that. This software is really good because that's all in one place where he has like a Facebook page where he asks questions that are really better organized and searchable than the Facebook group is. There's a place for uploading videos, and I'm like, oh, this is really great. So it's a somewhat expensive software, but I'm testing it, and that's going to be a new system. I'm going to invite everybody to come and join that. But if you're interested, just email me now. So when I send a newsletter out, that people can start. I'm still testing out how it works, but I'm probably going to use it. I was really excited playing with it this weekend. But email me so you get it's just for immigration lawyers. So if you email me and your bar number, stuff like that. But we'll get you in on that, so you could do it. So communicate with me on that. The community is so aspect. We'll have a free Q&A that you could join for if you're an immigration lawyer. But then all these videos that a lot of them are paywall, but there'll be free stuff as well. And I put our CLEs we do there and all that kind of stuff. I think it's really interesting to develop that community, and so we can see each other. Follow us on different social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and it's really good because we have all our clips there, as well as our YouTube page for Immigration Lawyers Toolbox. Definitely check that out. Sometimes we do these interviews that are an hour long, but we get the best, 5 minutes here, 3 minutes there, big clips out of them. It's really helpful. I'm going to do an episode that's called Ask Me Anything about, personal, business, JQK law firm, Immigration Lawyers Toolbox company. We will ask questions about that. We already got a bunch of good questions, so that's going to be an issue. Definitely check that out. There's another thing I want to talk about. Oh yeah. So we have a course. We just got some new students too, teaching the basics. If you're switching to become an immigration lawyer, a lot of people who are listening here are, doing trust and wills. They're doing criminal law, bankruptcy, and they want to get into immigration, or they just graduated from law school, don't know how to get in. And I really thought about this for many years, and I created a course that really breaks it down, how to get involved in the basics of immigration, which is the marriage green card case. It's the bulk of how I make money. I'm going back into business now because I'm hiring immigration lawyers and stuff like that. Because in plenty cases, they need a team a lot of times. It's the best kind of case. And I have a course that breaks down how to do it step by step so you get more confident. So it's adjustment of status, consular processing, what is it, admissibility, how to fill out the forms, who to mail it to, really just the A to Z, the nitty gritty of it. As well as I think is really important that I used to not talk about because I was like, oh, it's a given, but having office hours where we just talk regularly about what's going on in a group, especially. We have some private consul office hours we'll do part of the program too, but the group is really because you see what other mistakes people are making, what questions they have, and it's regular. I'm here to help you and just continuous. We just got done, I think, episode number 14, so we're doing it for over a year now. We had ones before that too, which I didn't number. So if you're interested in that, email me. I'm redoing the pricing system, so it's a really expensive course because I'm getting more and more people. I thought maybe just bring down the price to do it, and then have this new software that's going to be better than the way I was doing it. So everything's getting cleaned up, more professional. But everyone's done it, loves it, and I don't get around doing video testimonials, but I'm going to ask them to do it eventually. I've been talking about that, but you'll come. You can ask other members. I'll give them those, ask them what they think. I'm not worried about anything but positive stuff on it. So check that out. Having said all that, one more thing, I have a law firm, JK Law, because we are expanding. I'm not looking to hire you immediately, but if you're a person in the field, email me to be on my radar. Excuse me, I'm coughing. Be on my radar about joining the firm in the future. I get to know you. May or may not work, but I'd rather have the relationship now. So in 6 months when I need somebody, I know who it is. So feel free to email me using the email here, Immigration Lawyers Toolbox, info@immigrationlawyerstoolbox.com or info@jklaw.com, just to meet or at least have your email in the system for when the time comes. Having said all that, let's get the show started. All right, so I have a list of stuff. Hopefully, we're already 6 minutes into it just with the intros, but I would get into it. The first thing I want to talk about, I have like a list of 13 stuff. I want to probably not say a few of them to keep it at 10. But someone posted, Rhett Rose in particular, on a Facebook who said, for anyone with a long overdue ICE FOIA request, I'm sharing some new information. Apparently, ICE was so backed up that they're changing their processing where you have to email the USCIS. So you may have even gotten a denial on the FOIA, but now you got to send a separate FOIA to USCIS and tell them that you've been waiting for ICE FOIA and that work with them. And so apparently USCIS is going to be handling a lot of FOIAs for ICE because they're so backed up. So if you do have a case like that that's been backed up through them, be mindful of that. There's ways of getting around it with ICE to hurry up the process. And they're being pretty quick. I just had a 2-hour team meeting before this. And I inevitably, even though my executive team talks, supposed to be running it, me being me, I'm jumping in there and talking and yelling. Not yelling in a bad way, I get excited. And when you're talking, you all probably do with the Zoom meetings. When you're talking to a camera, I can't tell how far the person is because I don't see the microphone per se. And so I'm like yelling and yelling because I feel like the person's a mile away. But they're right here. I don't need to yell. And I'm doing this podcast too. And it avoids my throat from dying, especially at the start of the show. So I'm going to try to calm it down. Hopefully you can hear me. Secondly, I made a comment in the last podcast about Canadian visa reciprocity chart. So essentially, the Department of State updated its reciprocity chart for Canada and said that even if a person is not a Canadian citizen, if they're a green card holder, but they're processing like the immigrant visa case out of Canada, they're going to respect the visa reciprocity charts for Canada. So it becomes really helpful for an E2, for example. If you're going to do an E2 and your home country is some country has a 2-year E2, but you're in Canada, you're a Canadian resident, you could potentially get a 5-year E2 visa. So that's going to be helpful. But there are exceptions. This doesn't apply for people that are from certain countries like Iran, Syria, this and that. So definitely check out the visa reciprocity page for it beforehand. But it doesn't apply to everybody per se. There are limitations, just like the automatic revalidation for F1 student visa holders who have expired visas who visit Mexico or Canada and return within 30 days can return on an expired visa. That applies to a lot of people, but not to Iranians, Syrians, and the blacklist. So be careful. Don't send a client out for those and then find out that it's a bad situation. Another thing I found on LinkedIn, a great attorney, first time hearing from them. They're a Murti law firm, but Mukan Senthurjati, I hope we got your name right. He was talking about what's going on in the Dropbox system. And I kind of mentioned in the last episode too. He says, U.S. consular posts in India to resume the pre-COVID levels of operations in the upcoming months. This is big on the tourist visa side too, which has been backed up. So that's a big deal. It should be noted that at the moment, there is no system in place for Dropbox applicants to make a request for expedited appointments. There's no, now the problem for these expedites is a lot of times you have to schedule a time, and then once you schedule, you can do expedite, but because there's no time to schedule, you can't even get to the expedite. So it's a mess for people who have to go to India, for example, for H-1B stamping, all that. And then he says, without the expedited option, based on the current wait times for Dropbox interview, later part of 2023 has not much help to many applicants. So imagine having to wait another year. That's crazy. 3, employee-based immigration visas move faster at the consular post in India due to the huge backlog in family-based immigrant visa applications. The current wait time for all documentary cases over a year or more. So that's crazy. With the recent news that consular post India to resume pre-COVID levels of operations soon, we are hopeful that the wait time should come down drastically. And you'll see this in Indian cases, family-based marriage cases. and they're taking forever. I'm even having I-130 for Indian cases taking longer, which is a shame because the I-130 takes forever, and then we have to deal with consular processing taking forever. All of a sudden, people are stuck for 2+, 3+ years on even a case that should be done much faster. So that was some good information that colleague shared over in India. Now, some really interesting news. They DHS, I think of it, DHS, they published these federal regulations, updates on how they're going to interpret the I-212, not I-212, the INA 212 field of inadmissibility under terrorism. And in particular, they're updating this for Afghanistan to say that, if you're forced to do something or it was like not something big or this and that, they're going to loosen it and give more discretion and be able to get a visa approved. And so it's interesting. They essentially doing a light waiver, but essentially came out for Afghanistan. But there's been this issue for Iranian cases where the U.S. designated the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, which is like, I guess, the Marines or something like that for Iran, or there's some subcategory. They essentially do terrorist stuff probably. And said if you've ever been a member of it, even before they were designated, maybe even 30 years ago when it just started, and Iran has conscription where you're forced to join the military no matter what. And if you're forced to join, they're not going to give you a visa. And they've been denying like a bunch of cases, marriage, green cards, all that for Iranians who since January 2020 who were a part of this. Right when they assassinated the head of it, the general, they started denying cases for people that have, they call it the IRGC. They also call it SEPA, SEPAH. That's how if you're in Iran, call it SEPA. That's essentially this terrorist organization. But based on this update that's happening to the Afghan rule, they did for the Afghans. This is a general update for how they're going to interpret 212 AC, I think, or something like that. So this applies Iranians. And one thing that's happening in a lot of Iranian media, they're like, oh, they're approving cases for SEPA again. We're all good. And I'm getting a lot of calls on this. But it's not clear yet how this is going to happen. It's going to be discretionary. It's probably going to go into long administrative processing wait times. You're going to have to file waiver-like paperwork to explain stuff. So there's a bunch of legal work. So be prepared if you're getting these calls from Iranians in particular. Always, when you get an Iranian case, one of the first things you have to ask is, where did you do your military service? Potentially it gets waived a lot of times. Like if you're the only son or you're too old or too young or this and that, there's ways to waive if you go to school. But if they did it at SEPA, all these cases, I've been saying we can't move the case forward. Maybe we do the I-130, we hold off on the embassy portion, consular processing until we know what's going on. Maybe even miss your embassy interview so you don't have a denial on the record for having a 212 AC terrorism charge or something like that. So now this reopening, it's like a decision you got to make and then work on waivers, but it's still not clear how it's going to process, how long it's going to take, all this kind of stuff. So it's good, but it's immigration good. You never know if it's really good or not. So it's something to be careful of. My next note, I say Child Status Protection Act, F2B from becoming F1. Okay, so this is a quick reminder. If you have someone who is the adult child of a single unmarried adult child of a green card holder, and then while the case is pending, the petitioner becomes a citizen, the case technically automatically becomes F1, adult child of a U.S. citizen. However, under the Child Status Protection Act, you could keep the case as an F2B, which has preferential treatment under the visa bulletin right now. They're adjudicated 1 year faster. And I have clients come in, a guy who's like, I'm still waiting another year. My case is with the NBC. I'm like, wait a minute, why didn't you just keep the case as it was? So you have to contact them and say, hey, listen, I want to keep the F2B, and they approve it. So be mindful of that. You could do that kind of stuff, or people consult with you. This is the kind of stuff people don't know, and they do these I-130s on their own, and they're like, oh, I'll do consular processing, and they waste a year of their lives for no reason. These are nuanced stuff with immigration law. You got to know and to share it with people. Another thing is there being updates that the administration is going to renew original first-time filing for deferred action for childhood arrivals. There's a rumor going on that this happening. It's been people are getting calls on it, but it seems they made a note that this is what they want to do. So you think about it now. In the discussions for it, when I was reaching it, they said they're probably going to keep the requirement for DACA that said you had to have been under the age of 31 on June 2012, which restricts a lot, as there's fewer pool of people that could even apply. But you'd be surprised how many people come to me who could have done initial DACA filings, never did. Because if they had that, they could have did some stuff for adjustment potentially. But that's there. So that's probably going to happen. Keep an eye on that. In the post of this, where this was happening, people are like, well, you can still file a first-time DACA. USCIS will cash the receipt, cash the check, and file a receipt. They just won't work on it, but at least you're in the queue and stuff. I haven't done that. I'd be hesitant to do that because if I'm not going to get something out of it and we don't know what's going to happen, I don't really want to send all this information where my client is because they don't have it for that. If the case is pending, it's not approved. So then when they have the address and stuff, it's a little bit puts your client in a pickle. But then again, if you file it, they have the paperwork ready for the rules do change. I don't know. I just wouldn't do it until I know that something's happening, but it's not like malpractice to do that. But just some notes to keep an eye out on DACA reopening. Now, there was a USCIS policy update on the 3 and 10-year bar, which is kind of interesting. It doesn't apply necessarily to a lot of people, but they finally officially said this, and different field offices were dealing with it differently, allowing the 3 and or 10-year bar to or 10-year bar to run while you're in the United States. So, if somebody here, they leave the U.S., become subject to 3 or 10-year bar, and someone posted asking, how did this come into play practically? What we see is someone leaves the U.S., becomes subject to a 3 or 10-year bar, and then, but because they overstayed, for example, on a tourist visa, but they still have their tourist visa stamp, and they just go and CBP lets them in without a waiver. Even though that when you overstay under, I don't know, ID 266 or something like that, 222, whatever the rule was, it automatically voids the visa to get in. So what some field offices were saying is that you're still subject to the ban because you haven't waited out the 3 or 10 years outside the United States. Some were approving it regardless. But now they're saying the time runs in the United States. I know it's a 3 or 10-year bar, the 212A9B or something like that, not the permanent ban. But what typically would happen is they would leave, do a tourist visa interview, and apply for a HARANCA waiver, a 212T waiver, I think it is. If you came in the United States with a HARANCA waiver, they would allow the time to move while you're in the United States. But in the rare case, the person is allowed to get in, and they say with entry, lawful or unlawful entry, which is kind of interesting because if they return unlawfully, I think that they're subject to that permanent bar or something like that. I'm not sure. I don't know permanent bar cases too often, but it's just a thing to know that time runs for 3 or 10-year bar while you're in the United States, and they made that policy. I think it was a bit over a lawsuit. So that's interesting news. Every once in a while, every couple of years, you have a client that's going to help with that. Another note, I've been, when I get cases, they always come in threes. So if I deal with someone from a random country, I normally Cambodia, all of a sudden I'll get 3 Cambodian cases. It's kind of weird. I deal with an issue like this one where someone filed an I-751 and it was denied the refiling after the 9-day window is closed. I got like 2 of these. I'm waiting for the third one to come. But essentially, I had one case, a consultation where the person filed an I-751 with just the form. And a couple years go by and they get a denial. Now you know an RFE, so be careful. No RFE even denying it. Now the denial was incorrect because they didn't specify why they denied it, so that's improper. But we're just going to refile the I-751 at late filing and explain. And there was another one where they filed I-751, and why was that denied? How did the situation? I have to take better notes. But the bigger picture issue I was trying to get at is when can they file for naturalization, and should they file for naturalization? So in these cases, we're going to refile the I-751. Once it's receipted, we're going to immediately file for naturalization because I-751 refiling is going to take 1 or 2 years probably. It's going to take forever. In the meantime, it's delaying NATs, but really on the strategic side, especially in Los Angeles, we're getting naturalization cases done in 3-4 months. It's crazy. So if the naturalization goes to interview, it could force the I-751 to be adjudicated, and we could be done with this really fast and avoid potentially getting NTA and all this stuff too. Even though, if we refile it's receipted, jurisdiction is going to be with USCIS, so it's going to lock in anyways. But that's the thing. Now, one of the people we're consulted with said, I talked to another lawyer. The lawyer said, don't file a NATS. It's too dangerous. It causes a denial. I'm like, that doesn't make any sense to me. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't think so. I don't see, at most, we go to the NATS interview, and they say that, we don't have the I-751 file yet, so maybe we'll do the naturalization civics test, but then the case goes on hold until we get the I-751. And in that case, we bring the partners, they can ask an I-751 question. I don't know. Whatever it is, inevitably, the NATS file is going to push things up, so I don't see any reason why not to file. And I mean, there may be some reasons, but in these cases, at least, I'd file them. But I saw there was a difference of opinion when that person told me that lawyers differently. So I thought I'd bring it up here because that's what we do on the Immigration Lawyers podcast. We talk about different opinions and stuff. Okay, so a couple more law stuff. There was a lawsuit about EB-5 deauthorization of regional centers. EB-5 went and just cut off a bunch of regional centers off the list. and there was a lawsuit, and it was a court approve a summary judgment or something like that. That's as much as I'm going to talk about there. There are some discussions online about third-party signatures. So some lawyers, especially old school lawyers, been doing it for 20 years. They'll have a thing in their contract that says, in case I can't get a hold of a client, a lawyer can sign on their behalf. And based on that, they'll just sign, G28s and stuff for the client. That's not legal. The only way you could sign for someone else is if you give a durable power of attorney. Essentially, you have to show that the client's incapacitated and you get a formal court order that allows it. So you're like the person's guardian, essentially. So in that case, so be mindful of stuff. Don't sign. Now, there are things where I think people for bond hearings, they could sign for a G28 because the client's locked up. I've heard people for bond hearings, they'll take a G28 and sign for the client and get it in or something like that, that nuance. But with USCIS, I would not do something like that. But it's a problem. What if the person's locked up and they can't sign the item 130 and G28? How do you deal with that? I'm not sure. I don't deal with those kind of cases. The USCIS policy manual does have a section, a chapter on this of who can sign all that kind of stuff. So be careful not to do some crazy stuff there. Another thing, they I-907 premium processing, because I haven't been doing business cases myself for a while. I haven't been into it, but now we're getting back into it. I was looking at it. It used to be, it's 15 calendar days, but they updated the I-907 because they're adding different areas and stuff. And I was looking at the instructions the other day, and I saw that there's different timetables. So if you're doing an L1, it's 15 days. Now, it doesn't specify calendar days or business days. They're moving towards calendar days and they update the law, which means longer. They're eventually going to make it 30. But if you're doing an expedite I-539 or something like that, it's at 30 days. So it's not consistent. There's different days. If you go to the instructions for I-907, it's there. So I thought I'd mention that part. Quick note before we go to the marketing segment and get done. Champions for Freedom program. It's called Champions for Freedom, where you're training it to become an immigration lawyer. The reason why I call it Champions for Freedom is because in immigration, we're really helping people find freedom to come here from where they're fighting from. Look at the border, southern border. People are escaping for their lives here. Look at clients from Iran, from China, everywhere in the world, even Europe. We have a lot of negative stuff happening. These court rulings are happening, all that kind of stuff in the U.S. When I graduated law school in 2009, I wanted to leave the U.S. I was looking at foreign immigration, going to Chile. They had some entrepreneurial programs there. I'm like, yeah, but America's falling apart. 2009, things are going to hell. And then I got into immigration law because I needed to get a job, and some guy hired me. Some guy, be my employer, good guy, but in a sense. And then I started doing immigration law. I'm like, oh wow, as bad as it is here and all the craziness, it's still better than everywhere else, frankly. A lot of people are saying America is this. When I leave America, I've been to other places. It is better here. At the end of the day, we have a lot more freedom, and that's what it's really about in life and opportunity. America does a lot of effed up stuff across the world. It's probably the reason why we're rich, because we do this kind of stuff. But if it's not us, someone else is going to do it. Frankly, that's inevitably, it is what it is. So that's what we're here to do, is help people come on this side, and so we get their freedom, and through that we create our own businesses and get our own freedom. Because I really believe in entrepreneurship and doing your own thing. A lot of friends who have firms, I have associates myself, but I give that leeway to my associates. Listen, imagine it's part of your personal brand. Everyone, as a lot of firms don't do this, but I like my lawyers to come on videos and just plug themselves. And so, because I believe they should have the individual identity and brand and entrepreneurship in there. And eventually, they'll rise up the firm, all that kind of stuff. So get into it, learn how to do it, the business, and if we're really focused on the law and based on the law, then you can start a business. Email me and learn more about the Champions for Freedom program if you want to be an immigration attorney. So quick, some marketing stuff. Things are getting expensive. Inflation is hitting us. There's price rises and all sorts of software we're having. Just your house life, your own expenses are going higher. Even here in gas in LA is like $6.70. If you have kids, you got to go out and get this, and you get some fries somewhere. It's like $8 for fries at some fair or something like that. What's going on? So you got to really think about rising prices and how that affects the firm. I did an increase in our hourly for all the lawyers in the firm because it's needed. It's kind of scary when you increase prices. You worry, oh, is this going to affect people? And one thing I realized, people are going to pay it. If you have good branding, if people know you and want you as your lawyer, they'll pay it. If you're going to provide service, at the end of the day, if you're going to solve people's problems, which is what we do, if they have faith in you and they believe in you, they're going to do it. Now, you can always work on some payment plans, which is more and more. I used to never accept payment plans. It was absolute zero. But since COVID started, I started. So we have some sorts of payment plans. A lot of times it's like half down, 25% after 30 days and 25% after that. So in 90 days, Let me do the math. Day one, 30, 60 days essentially paid in full. Sometimes we give longer. I know other firms do much longer payment plan systems. It's kind of hard to keep track of stuff. You need to have a system, but in general, just something. Don't be afraid of rising prices because it is raising your prices because it is just natural. Everyone's expecting it. It is happening in the economy. So you got to do it too. You got expenses you got to pay. So just keep that in mind. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just the reality. It's just our costs are going up too. So that's just something I want to talk about. Another thing is, I like my LinkedIn a lot. LinkedIn is a great platform. One thing for immigration, there's Toolbox. I went on the LinkedIn page for it, and I pressed employees on there. And there's 12 people who are not. There are no employees other than me on Immigration Toolbox. There's 12 people who create random profiles that say they work for Immigration Toolbox, and they're probably reaching out to people and stealing money some way. So this happens every 6 months. Every 6 months, I check, and then I contact LinkedIn, and I tell them, "Hey, remove these people. They're not employees." So if you have a firm that's somewhat active on LinkedIn, to go check your employee tab, see if other people are claiming to work there. If not, you got to contact LinkedIn one by one and have these people taken off because there's a lot of fraud happening. I daily essentially have people who have created TikTok pages, Facebook pages, LinkedIn, everything, saying they're free. I've had people redo my whole website and just change and tweak the email address so you get business out of it. I've had to contact Google and online people to ban that URL, this kind of stuff. But it's kind of wild the fraud levels that happen. You try your best to stop it, but as soon as you hit one mole in the head, 10 more pop up, and there's only so much you could do. But just keep an eye out and at least keep your LinkedIn page. So I wanted to share that information. One is business wise, don't be afraid of raising prices if your costs are going up. It's just part of the nature of things. And secondly, beware of fraud that's happening. And LinkedIn was one I just recently noticed I check every once in a while. So with my throat giving way and a bunch of consultations due Monday, I got to rest. That's it for today's show. Thank you everyone for joining. Check out the magazine, immigrationtoolbox.com/magazine. Issue 4, issue 5 will be out pretty soon. If you're a lawyer and you want to be on the newsletter, email me. If you're interested in the Champions for Freedom program, go to Immigration Lawyer, email me. And I'll keep you posted when I launch the private information video page with the new software I got. I'm really excited about that one. It's going to be a lot of fun. Until next one, God bless. Be safe.